Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Musgrave Hill Bowling Club on Australia's Gold Coast for the second Trans-Tasman test between the Australian Jackaroos and the New Zealand Blackjacks. 3 games we're bringing to you today, starting off with the women's fours in the first section, which is just getting underway. We're followed by the men's pairs later this afternoon, and then the women's singles featuring double Commonwealth Games gold medalist Jo Edwards on her 50th birthday, taking on Kelsey Cottrell of Australia. But first up, it is the women's fours. Wendy Jensen, Selena Smith, Val Smith and Caitlin Inch of New Zealand up against Ellen Ryan, Lindsay Clark, Rebecca Van Ash and Natasha Scott of Australia. Of course, yesterday in the fours, it was a win to the New Zealand combination. In fact, Caitlin Inch on screen there, just to the right of picture, winning all 3 games she skipped for New Zealand in both the triples, 2 matches, and in the fours over the lady to her left, Natasha Scott. But unfortunately for New Zealand, it was not enough. They lost the other 3 matches, 2 in the pairs and 1 in the singles, and what it meant that Australia winning on shot differential, just as they had the second and third tests of the Trans-Tasman in November last year. I'm Brenton Vanessa-Roy. I will provide commentary throughout the day alongside Kevin Hicklin as always. Very good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Brenton, and the weather gods so far have been kind to us. As we know, the weather predictions aren't always not the best, but let's just hope we get through the full day here on day 2 at Musgrave Hill, and let's look forward to a continuation of that New Zealand form yesterday. Although the women lost that in the differential, they still put up a very, very strong performance. And of course the men's, they had won their first 4 games, and although losing their last 2, very, very good performance from the New Zealand men, and they'll certainly be looking forward for a continuation of that today as we look at that New Zealand women's fours. I just see Selena Smith has just drawn the shot on this, the first of 15 ends in this women's fours, and of course Jo Edwards, we were certainly wanting to celebrate her big day with some victories today, and she got narrowly defeated yesterday to Jo Edwards by Kelsey Cottrell holding the win, but Kelsey Cottrell with her last bowl secured the shot with the jack in the ditch. So a men certainly will be made there. And the other point is, in this regard, Brenton, there's also pressure back now on the Australian selectors as well, in the Australian side, because they like winning this event, and this is their big build-up, of course, for the world champs. And there's a couple of new players into the side, Ellen Ryan, for example, and Wayne Rudiker. So, the Australian selectors, they too, like New Zealand selectors, will be looking very closely at these results and the consistency of their players over the next 2 days, both today here at Musgrave Hill and of course tomorrow at Broadbeach. So let's just hope the weather gods treat us kindly and we get a full day's playing. As we see now, this Val Smith bowl breaking down towards the head is going to sit in alongside the jack. In fact, sits virtually right on front, and will make 2 of it. Good start by the New Zealand fours combination, and we'll see no doubt a wee bit of attack reaching weight by the Australian number 3, Rebecca Van Ash, who will certainly endeavour to reach, and certainly playing with a considerable amount of weight and just going to go past on the wide side. So New Zealand holding 2 and do have a back bowl. Of course, Australia, though, have got the tee to themselves. They've got 2 bowls sitting on the tee. Of course, if the jack is killed, so the instructions from Caitlin Inch to Val Smith, play down there again and get movement onto one of the New Zealand bowls, and let's try and move that back towards the tee, because that's the all-important thing when the attacking game comes into play, that you've got some cover in on the 2 metre mark. And we watch this bowl now of Val Smith. This is a good bowl, and this is going to do virtually what Caitlin Inch wanted, Brenton, and gives that cover towards the 2 metre mark, knowing that Australia, of course, are going to be attacking the head.
Yeah, certainly. And as you touched on earlier, Kevin, a lot of players have a lot to play for. Selena Smith, one for New Zealand, who has a lot to play for, given that by her standards, certainly not a good day for her, the first test, with her combination with Jo Edwards in particular in the pairs, which is a spot she is playing for. Obviously, Kirsten Edwards and Taylor Bruce would love that spot as well. So a lot of competition there. So Selena Smith will know that she needs to perform better today. Starting off with this, the fours. And likewise for Australia, a number of players who are under pressure, even the likes of Natasha Scott, who's been a great player for Australia, one of the very best skips in women's bowls. She must hate seeing the side of Caitlin Lynch because she has struggled against Caitlin Lynch in recent times. Of the 5 fours matches over the last 2 Trans-Tasman tests, New Zealand's won 3 of the 5, with 1 being a draw. So Australia's only won 1. And of the triples matches, there's been 7 matches. Australia's only won 2.
Yeah, well, you know, you and I have spoken about this, Brendan, and the emergence of Caitlin Lynch as a really formidable international skip now, and that with those results against Natasha Scott certainly highlights exactly what you're saying. And there's the split that we were talking about, and the Jack went to the ditch.
I think it popped back out. I think it's just below the Australia 0 actually here. So that's where the Jack has been placed.
So New Zealand, we're not sure who would be holding the shot there. We can't get the camera panned right down over that spot. But Caitlin Lynch, with her blue bowls, she'll be endeavouring to draw as close down to the deep end of the rink as possible. And you're right what you say about, I think there's a number of the Australian players that are under some pressure to perform. As you watch this bowl of Caitlin Lynch's, is it going to run all far enough? No, it won't, and I think they're quite sure. So the call there from Rebecca Van Ashes to Natasha Scott, that there it is now, and saying that Australia have got 2 seconds, because that is the New Zealand bowl is actually the shot, and the indication to Natasha Scott is to attack that New Zealand bowl, because the Australians are confident of they're having 2 seconds. It's on its way. The Natasha Scott drive and went by.
Almost took out her second there, which would have made things interesting. So 1 for New Zealand. Wendy Jensen, as always, quick to grab the mat and the Jack, indicating that New Zealand won the end. So a single for New Zealand. They are on the board first in this women's fours matchup. First session of the second Trans-Tasman test here at Musgrave Hill on Australia's Gold Coast. Early on in the pairs alongside, and New Zealand down 3-2 after what must be a couple of ends already in the women's pairs matchup as well. And bear with me as I look through a few angles to try and find the scoreboards. But in the pairs, New Zealand for the men are up 2-0 over Australia. Oh, so that should be the singles, of course. And the singles, Shannon McElroy in the race to 21, 2-0 up over Aaron Wilson. And in the fours, Australia leading 1-0 over New Zealand after the first end of that men's fours contest.
So we are seated quite some distance away, in fact, from where the greens actually are. We're sitting under cover here at Musgrave Hill, which hopefully, if the adverse weather arrives, as it was supposed to yesterday, we're relatively protected. And there has been provision made, Brenton, I believe, if the weather does pack in, that the Trans-Tasman would move to a indoor complex at Paradise Point. But of course, where the optimism is that that's not going to happen, and we'll be here for the day to play the full 3 rounds and then Broadbeach tomorrow.
Yeah, well, originally yesterday was supposed to be the worst of the weather days, and we obviously got through fine with apart from maybe 15 minutes of drizzle, really.
Very light drizzle, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, it wasn't anything significant. There's wind again today, but there's pretty much always wind up here at Musgrave Hill. Talking to Chris Lalive, who's obviously the bowls coordinator and member of the Blackjack squad, but bowls coordinator here at Musgrave Hill. Given that there's not really any other higher points than this, if there is any wind on the Gold Coast, it will find its way here.
It's fair to say there's wind every day at Musgrave Hill at some point in time. And you see Selena Smith trying to edge past the Australian shot bowl after Wendy Jensen, her 2 bowls were well short, and unfortunately with those bowls at that line, it cuts the draw line off as well, or restricts the draw line. And the big thing for New Zealand, I think personally, Brenton, is just to, we spoke about it yesterday, of how they played the game and managed the game and made sure that they didn't get into positions where they were dropping big numbers. And that's why it's imperative, as we've already spoken about, that our leads in all disciplines actually give New Zealand a good start. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to be sort of under the the cosh from these Australian attacking players as we watch this second bowl now of Selena Smith trying to draw around the bowls to the shot. Has it got the weight to? No, it has not. So New Zealand at this point in time, well, Australia have only got one bowl over their head as well, but there's nothing there really for Val Smith to play to, and that's the area that we've just got to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to remove that risk out of our game.
Lindsay Clark, who's been so successful with Rebecca Van Ash in the pairs, and that's certainly one area where Australia will be feeling very comfortable in the women's pairs. Got to say likewise in the women's singles, where Kelsey Cottrell, I think, has really put her hand up for that spot in recent times in the third Trans-Tasman Test in November last year, and winning her battle with the double Commonwealth Games gold medalist Jo Edwards yesterday as well.
So here's now the Val Smith bowl, and the difficulty here, of course, for New Zealand is they've got to play this precisely, because otherwise you'll disappear under the line. Talking to Gary Lawson just prior to the commencement of play, and the greens running at around about 14-15 seconds, which is actually good when you see a bowl like Val Smith, because the bowl is not going to run a long way away. It's going to hold up, its weight will hold up quite well at that speed of 14-15. Here's a great bowl from Rebecca Van Ash sitting out the New Zealand bowl and making two shots of it. Now that identical shot been called by Caitlin Ince, a very impressive New Zealand skip, and that's a great stat against Australia, isn't it? Against one of, as you rightly said, Natasha Scott, regarded as one of the top women skips in world bowls, and Caitlin Ince hasn't been skipping that long, and certainly that's an impressive record for Caitlin Ince against Australia. So you watch this bowl of Val Smith, just got to get past and doesn't quite get the jack. She was unlucky there with Val Smith, played that on a good line and good weight, and just got a slight feather which just pushed the bowl out to the side.
Yeah, very unfortunate there. Great effort from Smith. Two Smiths now in this four, of course, with Selena Goddard. Now Selena Smith following her wedding a little over a week ago.
You remarked, Brendan, about the pairs, Rebecca Van Ash and Lindsay Clark. Leslie and I saw them play just but a couple of weeks ago at Burnside in the Invitation Pairs tournament there, where they qualified for the top 8. And Aaron Wilson, of course, won that, went through unbeaten with Corey Wedlock. But their hardest game and their very narrow win, virtually on the last end, the last two ends they got up to win, was actually against the combination of Rebecca Van Ash and Lindsay Clark. So they're certainly a very, very good pairs combination, and they've shown it so far as in the first two games of this Trans-Tasman.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the game we showed yesterday as well as our opening session game of the first test, and they were comprehensive in victory over Selena Smith and Jo Edwards. Just on the rink alongside Jo Edwards playing Kelsey Cottrell in the women's singles, and Kelsey Cottrell just picked up 3 on the last end, so she's now leading Jo Edwards 6-2 in the race to 21. Of course, Cottrell on the last end with Jo Edwards holding match, managing to drive the jack into the ditch and win that match 21-19, an absolute thriller.
Well, they've had two thrillers of recent times, Brendan, haven't they? They game in the last series when that massive comeback by Jo Edwards, and again yesterday another big comeback to keep herself alive, as Australia now coming down to trying to get to their own bowls here, turning them into the head. Indication was when there's only one now to Australia, the Caitlin Ince bowl, which feathered into Australian bowl, was in fact second shot, but that last bowl now of Natasha Scott may have changed that situation.
Val Smith just looking over the head, seeing what the situation is. I think indicating a couple down by the looks of things. So it'll be interesting to see the shot that Caitlin Ince tries to play for here, whether she can try and get a trail on the jack and move it back towards these two bowls on the black and white bowls of New Zealand on the left-hand side of the screen.
Well, the shot that Val Smith's calling is a scoring chance, but a dangerous chance, because asking to play to her blue bowl to get it into the head she could possibly get the side of it and the blue bowl just disappear completely off the head and New Zealand will be more than 2 down. I go along with you, Brendan. To me, the safest and best result shot possibly is to play down through that port to try and get that touch on the jack or to sit on the inside of the Australian
she's going
bowl.
to play forehand, so she's playing the shot that Val Smith called. Is she going to get a touch off that bowl into one of the others? No, it doesn't take anything. It goes through unaffected. So now I think we're going to get the measure out, are we, to confirm how many it is. Obviously Van Ash is sorting out the head before Natasha Scott plays her final bowl. And then we will, I think, get that measuring tape out, but we might not need it for first shot if Scott can draw a shot herself here. This one looks on the wide line.
Well, you could see that bowl got some wind halfway down and just saw it straighten up.
So Australia have the shot. It's just by how many?
Ellen Ryan's
get rid of 1. We'll get rid of 2. And now is that blue bowl there? Oh, Caitlin Lynch closer than those Australian bowls out to the right hand side of picture. Val Smith to do the honours. So Australia will be on the board, scoring at least 2, and looks like 3. But Val Smith wants to make sure of it before conceding. But certainly the way the measuring tape was there seemed to suggest it favoured that yellow bowl, which Val Smith is now measuring to now. She'll come back to the Caitlin Lynch bowl, I think, to confirm. Every shot important, as the women know more than anyone, given that shot differentials aside the last 3 tests between these two sides. Well, I think Val Smith is maybe indicating now it is the Caitlin Lynch bowl.
Certainly.
So now Rebecca Van Ash says, well, let me have a look. Let's see what I come to. Maybe an umpire called in here, I think, to sort this one out.
Could well be.
Let's see what Rebecca Van Ash can come up with.
Oh, that's, yeah, I think the umpire's coming. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go. Umpire will come out to decide this one, but certainly going to be 2, potentially 3 for Australia, so they will be taking the lead. Kelsey Cottrell, meanwhile, has picked up another 2, so in the race to 21, women's singles alongside this match, Kelsey Cottrell of Australia leading Joe Edwards, the birthday girl, 8-2, now 8-2, and the 2 men's matches going on. We have Shannon McElroy 3-2 up in the men's singles. And we'll check the men's fours scoreboard a bit later on. We get an opportunity, as Kevin mentioned, from our broadcasting position here. A few things obscure our views of the board, so bear with us as we'll do our best to keep you up to date with the other 3 matches going on. Of course, that women's singles match, Joe Edwards up against Kelsey Cottrell. The men's singles, Shannon McElroy against Aaron Wilson. And the men's forwards, Chris Lalieve, Mike Kernahan, Gary Lawson and Ali Forsyth up against Wayne Rudiger, Corey Wedlock, Aaron Tees and Aaron Sheriff. As the umpire called on here.
Different sort of measure today. Not to have a look at this. This isn't the.
Well, you see all kinds. That's one of the great things about these Trans-Tasman or the major international events, isn't it? We see all different kinds of measures. Hopefully they all come up with the right result.
So we'd call this one, Alex would know anyway, we'd call it the fixed measure, would you? And it was the Caitlin Lynch bowl.
Yeah, so well done, Val Smith. You win that battle over Rebecca Van Ash. So it is 2 for Australia then. And after 2 now of the 15 ends, it is Australia 2, New Zealand 1.
Just a question, Brendan. I think if we take Kelsey Cottrell and Joe Edwards, now we all know how good a player Joe Edwards is, but do you think it might be a bit of a sort of question the New Zealand selectors and coaches are asking themselves that Joe seems to have a struggle to get away to a start? The last 3 games now against Kelsey Cottrell, Joe's had to come really from behind to keep herself one in the game and get to within a winning opportunity. And Kelsey Cottrell has in now the last 3 games of singles, 2 of which she's won. Of course, this is the 3rd one, but she's certainly got the jump at the start on Joe Edwards. And I wonder whether just if there's some reason for it, if there's
Well, it's no doubt something that Gail Melrose, the rink coach there, will be discussing with Joe Edwards, and something they'll look to try and rectify, especially come the World Championships. But it seems like Kelsey Cottrell has got Joe Edwards' number right now.
Certainly so, as we watch a good opening bowl from Alan Ryan, and sitting right on top of the jack, the Wendy Jensen bowl short under the head, and great start by the young Australian player.
Well, we knew the Australians were going to bounce back, didn't we?
Certainly did.
After yesterday, a disappointing day by their standards, losing the first 4 men's matches. And New Zealand for large parts up in a lot of the women's matches as well. As we mentioned, just going down by shot differential, with the matches finishing 3 apiece as far as wins go.
See, this is the... what she bowls at Winnie Jensen, and see, this is exactly what we spoke about just yesterday, Brenton. It's about, that's the side of the green that you don't finish on. You've got to finish so they can come back to the centre line. Those 2 bowls become immediately 2 ineffective bowls for the New Zealand side. So thus then Australia starts to dominate the ownership of the head quite early on in the piece, and puts pressure in on the New Zealand players coming in behind, and cuts, and of course also, as you can see, it restricts the draw line as well down to the jack. So Selena Smith now has got to come down with reaching weight down under that short Australian bowl, the first bowl of Lindsay Clark's, trying to get down to that shot bowl or to the jack, and looks to be tracking on the wide side, and it will be.
Yeah, not a bad place though.
Good home.
Yeah, good home, as they say, and especially when you compare it to the 2 Wendy Jensen bowls, a lot better place to be in comparison to the Lindsay Clark bowl. And obviously that Lindsay Clark bowl is pretty much on the draw line, isn't it, on that forehand side now?
Virtually sitting on that draw line.
Wouldn't be surprised if this goes smack into that to just prove the point.
That confirms that it was sitting right on the draw line. So now the weight's got to be like firmer down under that line.
Yeah, now with that moving just a bit, there is a nice draw line here for Selena Smith, if she can just make that slight adjustment and weight from her previous one. And now she may be able to find a target to the jack.
So playing down on that weight, down under that narrower line to reach down. This is a close, good attempt here by Selena Smith, just going to drift past the jack, but a very, very good bowl. Definitely second shot. And that now gives the New Zealand side something to play to.
Yeah, already Selena Smith's been better on her game in these first 3 ends than we saw yesterday, and our match particularly that we covered. That's the consistency she needs as well, if she's to keep her mind and her name in the selectors' thinking.
But it becomes all strategic and tactical, I know, Brendan, but it brings a scenario up whereby, we spoke about this yesterday, the 2-bowl lead, 3-bowl lead, and you've got to try and find the right balance. So are we saying then that perhaps Selena Smith is better at 2 in the 4s and going to play in the triples as well, and then you try and endeavour to get a lead, a 3-bowl lead for Joe Edwards, because she's been so far in this game this morning, playing at number 2, has been very effective, has Selena Smith, where she wasn't yesterday off the front. So it's a matter of trying to find, that right balance. And you mentioned before, like Kirsten Edwards and Taylor Bruce, who was sitting, waiting for that team to be announced, and certainly would be in the frame. And it's just a bit of thinking for the selectors to do to try and get that balance right. And
playing with weight there, Val Smith, and unfortunately came under the line, all knocked away that back bowl of Selena Smith into the ditch and off the rink.
And remember, of course, these greens that we're playing on, like yesterday at Club Helensvale and today at Musgrave Hill and then tomorrow Broadbeach, these are the 3 greens or clubs that are going to be used for the World Championships as well. So New Zealand, these are the greens. This is the sort of conditions that they'll be playing in come May.
Yeah, well, it certainly will be, because it's not a warm day today, so this is probably the kind of temperature it will be for the World Championships. Of course, still unseasonably warm for New Zealand standards, when it's going to be early 20s come May, June, and that's what they'll be expecting. So and the wind, as it always is here, a factor. So invaluable preparation for those world champs, no doubt about that.
And so we watch this bowl of Val Smith. This is on a better line, trying to reach down to the counting bowls. Gets the touch, gets the jacks. Very unlucky again there. And one of the Australian bowls just followed the New Zealand bowl, but Val Smith went for the target, got the target clean, but just a bit unfortunate where the bowls
ricocheted off these bowls to the right, didn't it? And the jack then ended up resting right next to an Australian bowl.
Very unlucky.
Unfortunate indeed. Great effort from Val Smith. Great correction from her first bowl to her second, when she was a bit narrow with her first. Her drive was perfectly executed the second time, or weighted bowl. Now that head situation has changed around.
And of course, the pace of these greens, like today especially, and no doubt it'll be for the World Championships, certainly enables you to play all the shots on them. You can play the weighted shots, you can play the draw. It just lends itself to, I think, creating good heads with this sort of speed. And talking to Gary Lawson, as I say, before the game, he was saying that the surface is very, very good surface to play on. So that augurs well for a very, very good presentation of the greens here for the World Championships. And there's nothing wrong with the greens, of course, yesterday at Club Helensvale, and no doubt that'll be the same tomorrow at Broadbeach.
Should be able to give you an update on the other matches in play as well at the end of this third end, completion of it. Go around the other three boards. Women's singles, men's singles and men's fours also taking place in this first session. Second Trans-Tasman test here at Musgrave Hill on the Gold Coast. Playing with weight again is Caitlin Inch. Unfortunately runs into those short bowls of Wendy Jensen. Splits them apart, but now really blocks up further that backhand side, trying to get towards the jack.
Certainly restricts that line, as you rightly said, Brenton, down to the jack. There's not many options there, and New Zealand, not quite sure the number 1 or 2 down. We watch this bowl of Natasha Scott, which is going to actually go into the ditch.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any bowls underneath our graphics here. I'm assuming not. And so it should only be 1, 2.
That's indication then that Val Smith gave to Caitlin Inch that it was just the one. And there you'll see the scan with the camera, and that the New Zealand bowl definitely second shot. And as Brenton rightly said, it's cluttered up the front of the head there to get down to the shot bowl. Difficult assignment here for the New Zealand skip, Caitlin Inch. And that's going to go under the centre line early in the piece and won't do any damage.
I don't think so anyway. Yeah, just the one, I believe. So 3-1 now Australia after 3 of the 15 ends. In the women's singles, we'll give you an update of that one shortly, but in the men's fours, Australia leading 2-1 after 3 of the 15 ends. In the men's singles, Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson 4-3 in the race to 21, and it's now Kelsey Cottrell leading Joey Edwards in the women's singles 10-3 in that first to 21. So Kevin Hicklin was talking about it before. Kelsey Cottrell, it's 3 matches in a row, getting off to a very fast start against the double Commonwealth Games gold medalist.
Certainly has, and we in the fours, of course, women's fours, 3 ends of 15 gone, and Australia lead by 3-1 as we see. Alan Ryan draw just in behind the jack. Well skipped here by Caitlin Inch because Wendy Jensen has been struggling really with her weight, and the call from Caitlin Inch is draw passed by a metre. That's the idea, and that's good thinking, and it comes back towards the 2 metre mark, and it's good skipping to give this, and you'll see that Caitlin Inch was actually standing right on the 2 metre mark. That's where I want you to play to, and thus avoiding the likelihood of those short bowls. So, and Wendy Jensen responded pretty well. Sits in behind the head. Another good bowl here from Alan Ryan, and again you'll see Caitlin Inch just asking Wendy Jensen, play down to the yellow bowl, give yourself a metre of weight to the head. That'll make sure that you're not short.
Well, we saw Ellen Ryan struggle a bit yesterday in the women's triples match. She came good towards the back end, much more like her usual standards, but especially in probably the first 10 ends of that 18 end women's triples contest off her game. But so far, she's been pretty consistent off the front and has got the better of Wendy Jensen in this matchup.
She has, and I agree with what you say regarding Ellen Ryan yesterday, and also Natasha Scott, where you touched on that before, Brendan. But what Australia are doing here right now, and you see Lindsay Clark draw a front toucher. They're putting the pressure on right at the front end of the game, and that's the thing that we've spoken about, of how you build your heads, build your opportunities. Otherwise, you're trying to scratch around, play weighted shots, as we watch now Selena Smith play her first bowl on this, the fourth end, and it's going to go by, but had the weight, just that line was outside the line to get to the jack. It's a very, very small, it's not a very big target, I'm going to show you. But the Australian women certainly, Brenda was seen early on in the game, that the draw is certainly more consistent towards the head than what we saw yesterday. As you watch another good bowl come in here from Lindsay Clark, and that's good actually for New Zealand, because it does open up that other side of the head now, where New Zealand can play with weight to try and reach down through the bowls. And that's certainly the best option. It's correct what as Caitlin Inch is calling that shot now, come down through to Selena Smith, come down inside with weight into those two bowls. You may not get the shot, but you'll certainly dislodge, well, the four down, of course, at present, but you'll dislodge some of those three bowls in and around the jack. So how's the weight on this as it breaks down? But it's going to be not really, no, it's going to be shorter weight. That's not really what you want at this point of the head, is it, Brenton? You want to be through those three yellow bowls. So I'm sure Val Smith will be endeavouring to do that.
Yeah, it's not Selena Smith's natural game, is it? Really,
no, it's not.
Playing with those those weighted bowls. You saw there, unable to execute, unfortunately, for skip Caitlin Inch. So now it'll be up to Val Smith when she gets an opportunity to try and come up with something.
And see straight away Australia, they're holding the shots and now going to get ownership of that 2 metre mark as well, and would count, of course, at this point in time if the bowl of Rebecca Van Ashes draws to the 2 metre mark, as they're encouraging this bowl, the Australians, as it breaks down towards the head now, coming down towards that 2 metre mark, and not quite at the 2 metre mark, but close enough to it. And it's imperative now that Val Smith gets some contact on those front bowls. New Zealand 5 down, or 4 down anyway. So here's Val Smith, of course, 600 plus caps for New Zealand. Play down with a lot of weight needed to make sure the bowl holds its line down to those counting Australian bowls.
Yeah, playing with that narrower line, but it's far too narrow. Obviously, he had far more weight and was going to have enough weight to change a situation if it was on target. But just like we saw with the previous end, narrow with her first, Val Smith, she made a great correction in the last end. Can she do the same here on the fourth?
Certainly had there was the weight to play the shot. There's no future in just sort of playing reaching weight. It's got to reduce the count or get the numbers. New Zealand got 3 bowls in the back of the head, right down towards, deep down towards the ditch. And of course, one never knows where the jack goes when we may think we know where the bowl, where it's going to go to, but who knows when it gets hit? It can go in a number of directions. So we've seen now the call to try and cover the 2 New Zealand bowls is the indication from Natasha Scott that she wants. And question, is that got the weight to get all the way down there from Rebecca Van Ash? No, it won't. So the same shot we'll see now from Val Smith, but this is getting like crunch time to make sure that we can get to that target.
Yeah, and so far a complete opposite of what we saw in the early stages of the women's triples, as far as nearly every time Caitlin Inch was changing over, making her way to the mat. Comfortable as a position, holding shot, or certainly having a lot of options to work with. But through the first 3 ends, and unless Val Smith can change the situation here, and she does expertly, and that's going to go into the ditch.
And stays alive, and New Zealand have got the shot.
High fives down the other end of the green with Selena Smith and Wendy Jensen. That was very well executed. And as we've said, if you play with that weight, you don't know exactly where it's going to go, but you're going to hopefully get rid of at least the shot bowl, and that was absolute best case scenario.
Well,
you get not only the jack, but you trail it into the ditch.
Well, leaves New Zealand laying 3 shots, really, if you look at it from this angle that we're looking at, Brenton, if that's how it sits, and it looks as though it would be.
And this little white marker is indicating where the jack is.
So Australia are holding a good number, 4 shots, all bunched around the jack. And Val Smith, New Zealand number 3, with her second bowl, played a fantastic bowl, and it might just be the shot that gives that New Zealand side now the encouragement. It was a superb bowl under pressure from Val Smith after her first one was way off target, but certainly as she did the previous end, did Val Smith made amends and put New Zealand now in a strong position.
Well, she was unfortunate last time, wasn't she? But this time she got the rub of the green. That was a very good effort by Natasha Scott. Just maybe a couple of inches too much weight. Otherwise, that would have been the shot. We've been sitting right there on the edge of the green.
That was virtually just one roll to me, Brendan, wasn't it, really?
She'll get another opportunity, of course, as now it is Caitlin Inch. See what she can come up with. Can she draw another one close? If she's going to get round, this is a short Australian bowl. She gets a glance off it.
Will count for sure.
Yeah, it still will count. You're dead right about that. Now I suppose another option for Natasha Scott is she can maybe aim for that Caitlin Inch bowl, and
that's a target for her now to draw in between in that line there between the New Zealand back bowl and the Caitlin Inch bowl would at least give her a second shot, but not easy, of course, to draw right down towards the ditch. Seen out Natasha Scott. This is on the narrower side. And no, ran into an Australian bowl, so this is about, could well be about an 8-shot turnaround on this particular head from where it was when Val Smith lined up.
You're not wrong. They were holding 5, weren't they? 4 or 5, and then Val Smith with that great execution, traying the jack into the ditch. Now Caitlin Inch. This is looking handy if it holds up. If it holds up, will it hold up? Yes, it does. Brilliantly done. What a bowl from Caitlin Inch. So that should be 4, because there's a bowl in the ditch we can't see.
I think it's 5.
It's maybe, yeah. Well, we've got these bowls out here, the right-hand side. I believe you could be right. We'll wait and see when the board is updated. But 2 great bowls from Caitlin Inch there on the 4th end. There's that board as we try and bend around a few bodies here, see it being updated. Indeed, it was a 5, so 6-3. 6-3, New Zealand now leading after 4 of the 15 ends in the women's 4s. In the women's singles, Kelsey Cottrell now 12-4 up in the race to 21.
Well, I can just tell you that Andrew Kelly, who wasn't able to make the side because of the pending birth, well, his partner had a little girl this morning. At 2:30 a.m. this morning, the Andrew Kelly's and partner's little girl was born, and mother and baby all well and all happy back in Christchurch.
Brilliant. Yeah, just I think a week past the due date.
Correct. Now straight away this morning, Brendan, we spoke about this as well yesterday. The length of end, New Zealand got the jack straight away, shortened up, and playing a different style of game, but what a turning point that could well be in the game, because Australia, of course, leading 3-1, they held on to those. They could have jumped out, in fact, to an 8-1 lead, and that superb bowl by Val Smith, that second bowl drive, and then those 2 draw shots by Caitlin Inch right down towards the ditch board. Magnificent turnaround by the New Zealand 4 side, and now let's just hope now the front end of the side can back that good work done by Val Smith and Caitlin Inch as we watch the second bowl now of Wendy Jensen's. Just falls lower the jack. First one wide of the jack. And Alan Ryan now.
Yeah, just mentioned the score before in the women's singles and the men's singles. Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson 6-4 in the race to 21. And the men's fours, Australia leading New Zealand 6-1 after, I believe, 4 ends. Yes, 4 ends of the 15 in the men's fours. So New Zealand leading 2, Australia leading 2. And these close contests continue in the second Trans-Tasman test.
They certainly do, and I'm sure we'll see those right throughout for today and, of course, tomorrow. And again, we see Selena Smith over the head, but right on the centre line, so it was green to perfection. And Lindsay Clark, who's played some great bowls in these opening ends, just goes by with her second. So here now, Selena Smith trying to put the pressure on Australia early and converting again some shots after that great end on the with the 5. And watch this bowl, and a good bowl there from Selena Smith. Sits just inside the jack.
Yeah, a few high fives down the other end of the green. Selena Smith and Wendy Jensen there.
No, Lindsay Clark just going to go by a fraction.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it, Lindsay Clark, that the veteran of the Australian women's side at the age of 36.
Certainly, yeah, and of course, as we mentioned yesterday, that position, of course, was owned by Karen Murphy up until the last Test series, where she announced her retirement. So now Lindsay Clark becomes the sort of the mother of the side. Well, Kelsey Cottrell, of course, World Bowls 2008 as a youngster.
Well, she's been around a long time,
yeah.
Still very young in age, only 29, same age as Natasha Scott. Alan Ryan, just 22 years of age, and then Rebecca Van Ash, 31. But yeah, 36, and you're the senior statesman of bowls.
Yeah.
It shows how much the game has changed as well, especially at the elite level. It is very much a young person's game, World Bowls, and it's incredible that the likes of Jo Edwards continues to defy that, really, that she's still the world's best now at the age of 50.
Well, the other thing is as well, Brendan, which a lot of people may not understand. 2 days ago here on the Gold Coast, like the weather, the heat was just virtually unbearable. Now, if we go to the World Championships, these players, men and women, they're out there on the greens from 8:30 in the morning till late in the afternoon, early evening, and all up around about 14 days around about, and they play a lot of games, and you do have to have a level of fitness that doesn't see you tire out at the back end of the tournaments, etc. So, the younger people, no doubt about it, we're seeing it as well in New Zealand now. Like if we look at, Caitlin Inch, Selena Smith, Taylor Bruce, Andrew Kelly, Seamus Curtin, they're certainly stamping. That's no disrespect at all to we'd call our seniors like Mike Kern, Nellie Forsyth and Gary Lawson, but the younger ones are certainly starting to make an impression as we watch now this Val Smith bowl with New Zealand holding the shot, and there's a good reply after scoring that 5 on that previous end, and New Zealand holding a couple.
Yeah, and certainly it's the case particularly with the Australians, isn't it? All of their players are pretty much in their 20s and 30s.
Absolutely. Corey Wedlock, Aaron Tees, Aaron Wilson,
Aaron Sheriff, only 34, I think.
Yeah. So here looking for the jack was Rebecca Van Ash, and that's good for New Zealand actually, because she pushed the bowl out and now takes that shoulder that they can play off to the side of to get down to the jack, and New Zealand holding at least a couple. Renter, would you say? I'm not sure about the front one, but
well, it's incredible how things have turned, and you mentioned that Val Smith bowl, but because of that, New Zealand were able to get important jack and mat back, and not as much as they enjoy the short ends. I think they're pretty comfortable playing any length, but it's the fact that the Australians want to play the longer ends. So it's doing the thing that they least want to do.
They don't like doing this because they can't attack the way that they like to attack. As you watch this bowler, Caitlin, and just come in, sit right on front of the jack. So New Zealand responding well.
Lollipops just been signalled on the right-hand side of the screen, which isn't a good thing. It means 4 more shots for Kelsey Cottrell. So She's now leading 16-6. 16-6, Kelsey Cottrell over Joe Edwards in the race to 21 women's singles match here. Of course, this is the first session of the second Trans-Tasman test. Kelsey Cottrell winning 21-19 in a thriller yesterday in the first test, in a match where Kelsey Cottrell, like this match, jumped out to a big lead, and then Joe Edwards clawed her way back and was very unlucky not to win, in fact, that contest.
Interesting here, Brendan, that all of a sudden we're seeing things just turn around now. We're seeing a lot of indecision now from the Australians, three and skip what shot to play. I think the shot to play is playing down underneath the New Zealand bowls, trying to get a touch onto the shot bowl. Very difficult on the other hand, because you've got to be sweeping in towards the jack. And we'll see, taking a lot of time to play this shot, because they could face a scenario where they could have dropped about 9 shots in 2 ends, which will come about from one bowl from Val Smith.
Yeah, and certainly followed up by a couple of great bowls from Caitlin Inch, and then so far this end, more good performances. Looks like it's going to be touch narrow. It's just going to again promote one of the New Zealand bowls closer in and make, I suppose, a bigger target from the jack.
2 metre mark's the option here, no doubt about that, because that's checking whether that bowl is in the Australian bowl. That's why I thought the other hand was a better hand to play, because you were playing the hand that Natasha Scott played. You were playing away, in fact, from where the target was.
Well, we saw a big conversation, didn't we, in the women's fours match yesterday, where Natasha Scott and Beck Van Ash went over and talked to Coach Glasson, and it must have taken 5 minutes.
Took a long time
before they actually went on with the match, and then they weren't able to execute. Then Caitlin Inch came down and won the match for New Zealand. So.
Well, it sort of shows a wee bit that, I'm not saying it's mind games, but it's highlighting that New Zealand are in fact putting pressure on the Australian back end of the side.
Bit of cover put in by Caitlin Inch.
And the right thing to do. And now,
so New Zealand's now got the back bowl. If Natasha Scott does try and play with extra weight here and drives.
Well, 4 down. We're looking at it from this angle here, and again a lot of talk. And the other problem they've got, if they were to play on the draw down here on the back end, the New Zealand bowl sitting out to the right of the head is not actually sitting jack low, it's sitting jack high. So that means you can't get a slide, a generous slide in towards the jack. And standing on the mat, it's just literally it's a one bowl target, and it's just there's only 15 ends, of course, in the fours, not 18 like the other disciplines like the pairs and triples. So the ends can quickly run down, and New Zealand leading 6-3.
Yeah, we saw yesterday with the New Zealand men when we covered their fours match that when they dropped a big number, they were able to get momentum straight back and able to settle and get back and win the next end. They dropping big numbers, as I've spoken to Mike Kernahan last night, he was saying dropping big numbers are only really bad if you lose the next end.
Well, New Zealand dropped that 5 yesterday in the men's fours and came back and scored on the next 2 ends. And that's
exactly right.
And that's what makes a big difference now.
And that's exactly what the Australians will be thinking about here. We've just dropped a number. We don't want to be dropping another number, because that's when it gets really hurtful and really is a big impact after New Zealand has scored a 5 on the previous end.
And of course, it's New Zealand that built this head. Here's the drive, and it's going to go to the side, get a back bowl.
Well, knocks out one of those, so maybe reduce the count by 1, but we expect it to be at least 3 for New Zealand. We'll wait until that scoreboard is updated, and it is 3. Confirmed, so 9-3. New Zealand now leading after 5 of the 15 ends in this women's fours match. It's still 16-6. Kelsey Cottrell over Joe Edwards in the women's singles. In the men's singles, Australia now, men's fours, excuse me. Australia now up to a big lead, 10-1 after 5 ends. And then Shannon McElroy over Aaron Wilson, 8-5. In the race to 21 men's singles contest. So those are the 4 matches in progress in this first session. Trans-Tasman test number 2 here at Musgrave Hill. Overcast conditions, breezy, but certainly not bad conditions for bowls. Rather comfortable for the players, not too much heat as there was for the practice day a couple of days ago. And fingers crossed, bad weather, which has been forecast for the region this week, stays away from us and maybe goes to some of those regions in Australia that no doubt needs a bit of rain.
They certainly do. It's interesting now, the New Zealand Force team, Brendan, is at 15 ends, so you play the game really in 3 5-end blocks. And New Zealand have got through the first 5 ends, and they're in a strong position. Now the next 5 ends is just to make sure that you hold your position in the game, that you don't drop any numbers, that you just, you allow Australia to have one, you don't gamble too much on it, so you endeavour to control the scoreboard for the next 5 ends, and then 10 to 15, we see how we are and address, and it's a very good mindset, and it was one that Rowan Brassey always worked upon, that, and I can remember playing with him in Taranaki, and he always used to say to us that, and they were 25-end games, you don't win the game on the first 18 ends, you win it on the ends 18 to 25. And it's now for the New Zealand side, it's about playing in blocks and just making sure that they can close the Australians out by controlling the game with getting good starts, which they've got here with Wendy Jensen and Selena Smith. Wendy Jensen's draw one just jack high, and Selena Smith just a metre by, and straight away a good start for New Zealand on the 6th end. And I think New Zealand can be, that 4th end was so well played by both Val Smith and Caitlin Inch to see New Zealand score that 5.
Yeah, just turning the tables after being potentially 5 down on the head to picking up 5 themselves, New Zealand. And now following that up with a 3, so 8 shots in the last couple of ends after being 3-1 down on the score.
I know this sounds a wee bit silly, Brendan, but the 3 hurts more than the 5, really, because psychologically it starts to sort of gnaw away at you. And
well, it's back to what Mike Kernan was saying in his interview last night as well, that dropping a big number is only bad if you lose the next end as well.
Correct. So watch the Australian, seen out, Lindsay Clark going to draw the shot right to the centre line, and a bulge sitting just outside the jack.
And I suppose likewise, winning a big end and picking up a 5 is only good if you back it up, and that's exactly what what the New Zealanders did.
So we'll see now. Val Smith will endeavour to follow the Lindsay Clark bowl, try and sit on that shot bowl. And how's the line of this? Now it's going to come under the line, and Caitlin Inch urging it on, saying that it needs a metre away, and it just fell the Lindsay Clark bowl. You might have seen it just fall over. So it sits now really flat in behind the jack before the bowl was sitting up. So Rebecca Van Ash, the general manager of Bowls Tasmania, play her first bowl and sits on the New Zealand bowl. So Caitlin Inch, just good skipping, saying to Val Smith, not really worrying about getting the shot. Let's make sure that we've got another bowl close in on the head and amongst those 2 the 2 Australian bowls. And this bowl of Val Smith, this is going to be on a better line, is it? No, it's not. It's just going to, doesn't have the weight and just tangles itself up, and in fact closes the line off for Caitlin Inch to be able to get to the jack. The important thing now for New Zealand is make sure, as you said before, Brendan, if we drop one hit, we drop one.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it's all about. If the head's going the opposition's way and there's not much you can do to grab the shot, dropping one's fine.
It's fine, absolutely fine, yeah.
You've got a 6-shot lead at the moment. It's all about damage limitation and playing smart bowls, isn't it? And that's what we've seen a lot from Caitlin Inch, although the way she likes to play, she doesn't like dropping any ends.
No,
very aggressive young player.
Body language.
Talented, and speaking with her last night as well, says how much she just loves the pressure situations.
Yeah, well, she reacts to it too, doesn't she? She responds positively to it. She doesn't get down.
It's the role of the skip, isn't it? So often called on to make those big shots. Yeah, we've seen it already in this matchup. We saw it yesterday in our women's triples match we brought to you from Club Helensvale.
So it looks as though Caitlin Inch is going to endeavour to Michette's playing, as Brenton rightly said, certainly playing with a lot of attacking weight, trying to get up through the head. And
that's worked out wonderfully for her. I don't know if that was the aim, but that has worked out perfectly. And some of the Australians can only shake their heads going, how did that end up there?
Yeah, well, second shot, clearly second shot now, and very difficult, in fact, now for, Natasha Scott to add more to the head, because the Caitlin Inch bowl, and it's interesting that New Zealand have got a few others sitting around it now. So Natasha Scott or Rebecca Van Ash looking on the head, well, how can we get any more? Well, the news really is that it's very difficult, because there's not much to play to.
No, certainly not. They might have to just be content with the one here, and maybe just prepare to what you think Caitlin Inch is going to be doing with her next bowl.
Well, so you can see where Rebecca Van Ash is indicating to come out on that backhand side to stand, because Caitlin is coming down to have a look at the head, because she can play literally like a stun shot onto her own bowl and could push the Australian bowl completely out of the head. And if she misses that target, there's a couple of New Zealand bowls sitting out to the side of the head, and that's the indication they're looking at playing, to play down, reaching Caitlin Inch's blue bowl. The way how it's locked into the head, it's not as though she's going to dislodge it completely out of the head and expose New Zealand to dropping a number. There's a chance for her now, a good chance for her to play with that yard of weight and get a favourable result for the New Zealand side.
Yeah, Natasha Scott will have the last bowl of the end, so she'll have an opportunity to react to what Caitlin Inch does here. But you could see Rebecca Van Ash with the call earlier, trying to say play to this right-hand side of the screen to where she thinks Caitlin Inch will try and maybe affect the head here. And it looks like too much of a wide line. Playing with that weight. The weight was good, just not quite the right line, not the right green. So Australia will be picking up a shot. Can Natasha Scott make it 2 here? Cut that deficit to 5. The Australians have lost interest in that one, so it will be 1 to Australia. 9-4 now the score after 6 of the 15 ends in this women's fours matchup. And the women's singles alongside Kelsey Cottrell now up 19-6 in the race to 21. So only 2 shots away is Kelsey Cottrell from another win over the double Commonwealth Games champion, and crashing the birthday party celebrations for Joe Edwards. 50th birthday today in the men's fours. It's Australia, the Aaron Sheriff skipped combination, who are leading Ali Forsyth 10-4 after 6 of the 15 ends. And in the men's singles, it is Shannon McElroy 10-5 over Aaron Wilson of Australia, and that race to 21. So New Zealand leading 2, Australia leading 2. And this has so often been the case in these Trans-Tasman. New Zealand, though, yesterday turned the tables, and the men in particular winning 4 matches to start the first test. They dropped the last 2, but they'd already won the match. And the women losing by shot differential rather cruelly. So Australia, with the Jack and Matt back, go almost back to the 2 metre mark, as always, probably just a foot short of that 2 metre mark, and playing the length that they prefer. Play their more attacking game. Ellen Ryan with her first, comes up short, almost on that draw line on the forehand as well. So wouldn't be surprised if Wendy Jensen plays on her backhand side, and that looks like it will be the indication. Inch skip calling to her lead. And of course, we will have 2 more games for you today, including the repeat of these disciplines that will come in the 3rd session. We will be bringing you women's singles action as well. So Joe Edwards on her 50th birthday up against Kelsey Cottrell, and we're trying to stop the rot by the looks of things, unless she can pull off a miracle here. She has just scored a 3 though, Joe Edwards, so it's now 19, scored a 2 rather, 19-8 in the women's singles, alongside this women's fours matchup that we're broadcasting for you.
Yeah, Joe Edwards at present going through a lean patch, I suppose we could call it. But we all know the champion that Joe Edwards is, and I'm sure she'll make amends at some point. And of course, all the opposition who play Joe Edwards know what they're up against, and two very short bowls from Wendy Jensen. And again, fortunately, Alan Ryan hasn't really got anything really close either, but Lindsay Clark now, the Australian number 2, with New Zealand leading 9 shots to 4, and pushes the Alan Ryan bowl closer into the head. And we'll see now Selena Smith, she'll follow that bowl of Lindsay Clark. Plenty of room though for a shot to be drawn. They're not like the last end, sitting right on top of the jack. Looks a good line here from Selena Smith. How's the weight as it breaks down towards the head, and may well be second shot, not sure, but certainly on a good line and just over the head. But
could even be the shot, really.
Came right back to the centre line. So yeah, we'll cut an inch, not give anything away, but you're quite right as we watch this bowl. This looks a better bowl here coming in from.
That will be the shot now.
That's the shot itself for sure. That
from
bowl.
Lindsay Clark. Now Selena Smith with that target as well. Just try and follow that Lindsay Clark bowl. Sit on that. Take the shot back for New Zealand.
Just question, how's that line? Has to get past this front bowl.
I question the weight, I think, was the issue. The line was all right, just didn't have the weight. Sit short as well, and already 3 of the 4 New Zealand bowls.
But
significantly short of the head.
You can just say, Brendan, there's virtually only one effective bowl so far from the New Zealand 4 bowls that are played, and this is what we're talking about. You know, this is where you've got to hold the game over these ends, because not get yourself into that vulnerable position. And you know, we're at least 2 down here, and I'm just trying to see the 3. In fact, was the indication there from Caitlin Inch to Val Smith, and saying to Val Smith, just draw down through that port, get to one of those bowls, you can make second shot at least, that's fine, because big numbers hurt quick. So here's now Val Smith playing her first bowl. And how's the line of this bowl? It looks to be outside the line, and it goes by fairly quickly actually on this the 7th end.
Oh, it's actually 3 ends each, isn't it? So it's the scoreboard here doesn't quite show the
Correct.
tail of this match, and really a lot of the heads Australia maybe have had the better of, but New Zealand scoring a 5 and a 3 on the 4th and 5th ends.
So there's another counting bowl coming in here from Rebecca Van Ash, and 3 or 4 now to Australia. And I still think, as you rightly say, Caitlin Inch certainly not frightened of attacking, and now asking Val Smith to change her hand to play through the short Wendy Jensen bowls, trying to knock one of them into the head to at least get New Zealand a bowl in close proximity to the jack.
Yeah, just give her something to work with when she makes her way to the mat, isn't it?
So it's the call on the backhand for Val Smith to reach down to the Wendy Jensen bowl. And remember, we're a long distance away. We can't, we're virtually a whole green away. This bowl looks to be on the under the line, and it is.
Might work out okay though. It didn't sit there. It did knock out one of the Australian bowls. So given it was narrow, that was probably the best they could hope for, really.
Yes, it was
missed
off
the target.
It was certainly off the line, wasn't it? And you just reduced the numbers by 1. And Caitlin Inch now having a look to see what does it look like, and I think really forces her into the draw.
Yeah, just seeing if it's actually just 2 down. So that bowl just to the left and the bowl to the right, certainly 2. It's that one out the far left, whether that's a counter over the back white Selena Smith bowl. Certainly from our picture, we favour the Selena Smith bowl,
Yes,
but obviously camera angles are deceiving.
Yeah, certainly from our view, it looks like that Selena Smith bowl, as Brendan rightly said. And Natasha Scott, who really has struggled this game, and especially at the draw, she'll be wanting to make amends and get another bowl on the head for Australia.
Right
and she's
on
done
cue.
just that. She's
Look
done
at
just
that.
that. Now, the interesting thing about that, as good a bowl as that is,
It's a target.
it's a target. Caitlin's and should be quite happy to see that bowl go where it did to the jack, because there is a chance now for Caitlin Inch, who I'm sure will be attacking on that backhand with plenty of weight to get down to the jack or the counting bowls. The Caitlin Inch, former Oxford player, on the mat. She certainly won't be short, that's for sure. Well, the New Zealand skip on its way, trying to get down to the jack. It's coming to the centre line now. It's close to getting the front bowl to get the jack on as well. No, it doesn't. But it was certainly on a pretty good line.
Wasn't far away from just getting around that short bowl, and then it would have hit the target and would have taken away those two bowls just to the left of the jack. But running into the short bowl, unfortunately the deflection from the short bowl didn't go onto the jack, as Kevin was mentioning, which could have been a possibility. She'll get another opportunity though, and he has to make a slight adjustment.
There's only one bowl out from getting that result to the jack as we watch now. Natasha Scott, bowl breaking down towards the head, trying to get it. That'll be a counter as well, because it sits in front of what is a Selena Smith bowl.
Yeah, puts a lot of pressure on this
Big
bowl.
pressure.
4, potentially 5. Australia holding.
They've already committed themselves, I think, to the shot. You know, they wasn't far away. It was Caitlin Inch, and it's all the best option, I think, to run to the jack. More than likely on the forehand, where there's no likelihood of running into the front bowl of Wendy Jensen. But it's interesting, Brenton, this all started, as you spoke about, ineffective bowls at the start of the head up the front. Just makes it such a challenge. As you
Playing
watch,
on the forehand this time.
yeah, well, so I thought missed the bowl, but in fact she's going to go on the outside of the head.
Yeah, so missed everything and unable to execute with the drives this time, Caitlin Inch. So that's 4, and now they'll measure for the 5th. So a chance for Australia to level the match and pick up a 5 of their own, perhaps. They've certainly got at least 4. Val Smith again doing the honours. Measuring to that wide bowl first of Australia. And there's 5. Indicated by Rebecca Van Ash, and we are all tied up at 9 apiece after 7 of 15 ends. So New Zealand picked up a 5 earlier in the match in the 4th end. Now here on the 7th, Australia pick up a 5 of their own. In the women's singles, it is Kelsey Cottrell leading Joe Edwards of New Zealand 19-9 in the race to 21. In the men's 4s, it is Australia leading 12-4 after 8 of the 15 ends. And the men's singles scoreboard currently obstructed at the moment, but Shannon McElroy was leading Aaron Wilson. Last score check, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you an update of that shortly.
Now, of course, straight away we see the Australians deliver the jack virtue right down to the 2 metre mark. Now, Ellen Ryan, in fact, has gone narrow with her first. Now, the big thing for Wendy Jensen, we've got a different length. Now, you've got to draw to the tee. That's the key for Wendy Jensen. Don't be short, draw to the tee. As you watch the Jensen bowl on the backhand, it's on a good arc towards the head. How's the weight, though? It's going to go past with a lot of weight, in fact, and we'll go right to the ditch, in fact. And
a lovely member of our crew, Robbie, has just let us know that Shannon McElroy up 12-6 in the race to 21, men's singles over Aaron Wilson of Australia. Now 13-6, just picked up another single. Here's Shannon McElroy. Thank you, Robbie. Yeah, slightly obscured here in our commentary position. Obviously, we're under cover here at Musgrave Hill with the expected wet weather, and so we've got to make sure we keep all of the gear sheltered. But unfortunately, what it's meant is we're a wee while away from a few of the boards, so please bear with us as we do our best to keep you up to date with the other 3 matches going on, as well as broadcasting this women's 4s match for you.
good recovery there from Wendy Jensen after her first bowl was overweighted and went into the ditch, who drew a good bowl with her second on this, the 8th of 15 ends, and finishes virtually just jack low. But certainly the shot, as we watch this bowl of Lindsay Clark now, been impressed with Lindsay Clark at this game, draws the shot, sits virtually right alongside the jack. Now it's Selena Smith that played down on that backhand side, trying to reach that counting bowl. Lindsay Clark looks under the line, left her hand under the line, and I'm sure that's where it goes to.
Is that bowl going to teleport like we've seen sometimes? I apologise for the picture break-up here. And we can tell you that Kelsey Cottrell has won 21-9. It is. Kelsey Cottrell beating Jo Edwards on her 50th birthday. It's not very nice for Kelsey Cottrell and the women's singles. So Kelsey Cottrell, another win over the double Commonwealth Games gold medalist. That's 3 in a row, I believe.
It is 3 in a row now, yeah. The last game, of course, in the previous series that we were at, and then, of course, one yesterday and one today. And it must be starting to cause a wee bit of concern to the New Zealand camp and to Jo Edwards herself that something's just not going right, not getting away to a good start, and putting pressure on herself to play catch-up in that race to 21.
Yeah, so Jo Edwards, when she wasn't playing Kelsey Cottrell in the last Trans-Tasman, had 2 wins and a draw from her 3 matches. Since Kelsey Cottrell's come in, 3 straight wins. So it's certainly a change that has worked for Australia, and I think they have found their singles player undoubtedly for the World Championships.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brendan, I think I know who we're playing the singles for Australia come the World Champs in a few months' time.
Yeah, they have a few issues with a few other areas, just like New Zealand certainly have an issue at the moment with the women's pair, trying to work out who the ideal partner is for Jo Edwards.
They certainly have. They've got some issues trying to work out how they manipulate around the 2-bowl and 3-bowl difference to get consistency, because you can't have, you can't play, for example, the triples. We've got 6 bowls, and you're only playing with 3 effective bowls out of 6. So you've got to, the good thing about the men, if we take it yesterday, if we took the men's 4s as a case in point, out of their 8 bowls, they more than like consistently played with 6 effective bowls. In the women's pairs, we were really, no disrespect, but at the most we had the opportunity for 3 effective bowls out of 6 because it just wasn't happening. And that's the balance that they've got to try and get right. And we've seen already a couple of times here in this 4s game, when the lead in 2 don't deliver effective bowls, you're straight away vulnerable. So it's New Zealand got to try and find that balance now. To the back end of the teams are fine. Val Smith, Caitlin Inch, Jo Edwards skipping, the same in the men. Well, I don't think the men have got the same issues that they need to address, but certainly the women at the front end of the teams, of how you place the players to get those effective bowls, so you don't drop the 5s. You can build 5s, but you don't drop them, and that's, you only drop them when you're not playing effective bowls. And here we're seeing again now, hopefully we're seeing just what we spoke about, thanks to Val Smith then, because again, short bowls up front there, Australia holding 2 shots at present, and it's a big thing for the New Zealand coaches to work on to get that.
I suppose the lucky thing is there that Australia's been short as
well,
absolutely, with a few, so it's
absolutely.
It's an end which Australia haven't completely capitalised on New Zealand's short bowls this time, but yeah, that was a much needed bowl, that one by Val Smith. Well, another thing we talk about, that 21-9 result, Kelsey Cottrell over Jo Edwards in the women's singles. Differential obviously huge for Australia straight away from the first match, as well as getting a win. Plus 12 they are. So it leaves New Zealand playing catch-up for the rest of the day.
It does. A bowl here from Australia, draws right alongside the jack with the shot itself. Caitlin Inch now examining the head. What do we do here? And she stands looking back at the head. Not a pretty picture for sure, and really all there is really is to try and follow the Australian bowls down, to try and sit on the bowls. And I don't think there's much, I know they're looking at the other hands there, but I don't think there's much favour there, Brendan, because there's that many bowls in front. Blessed to the other hand on the, there's nothing in front. You can draw down to the bowls, and we have got 2 New Zealand bowls sitting just in behind it, just past the 2 metre mark. And of course, if you're fortunate enough to get to the jack, and to me the shot is certainly to play down on that backhand side to try and sit on one of those counting Australian bowls, because there's a lot up in front to try and get past. And the backhand's open with nothing in front of it. So here we see now Caitlin Inch on this, the 8th of 15 ends. Score locked up 9-all, and down on the head by 3 shots. And looks as though he's going to attack on the forehand. And that's certainly the shot to playing, trying to get down to these front bowls. And
yeah, just what you talked about, wasn't it, Kevin? A lot of short bowls in the way there. Obviously, going to get another opportunity as Caitlin Inch has cleared out now some of the short rubbish, I suppose you'd call it.
Problem there is now, though, for Caitlin Inch, there's no clear line to the jack on the attacking shot, and we've seen now that Natasha Scott sort of letting us off a wee bit here, and I still think the only shot is actually down on that backhand, trying to get down to sit on the bowls.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the way she's going to be playing.
No,
right?
It doesn't. Looks as though it's attack again.
I know, it is on the backhand side. Had us all fooled on the mat. Looked like she was just
Well,
lining
this
up.
to me is the shot to play. And just going to go by. Might sit on the New Zealand bowl, come in. It's going to cut one out, I would say.
Still potentially 3 for Australia. Wait to see when the scoreboard is updated there. Yeah, 3 for Australia. So 12-9. Australia now leading after 8 of the 15 ends. So just past the halfway stage of this women's fours matchup. First session, second Trans-Tasman test between the New Zealand Blackjacks and the Australian Jackaroos. Of course, the Australian women winning the first Trans-Tasman test at Club Helensvale on shot differential as they won the second and third tests of the last Trans-Tasman series in November last year. The men, Blackjacks men, winning the first Trans-Tasman test, 4 matches to 2 at Club Helensvale. At the moment, up in 1, down in another. In the singles, it is Shannon McElroy 13-9 up over Aaron Wilson in the race to 21. And in the fours, Australia 14, make that 14-4 up after 9 of the 15 ends there. And I think Aaron Wilson has just scored another to cut that deficit further, so now 13-10 in the men's singles race to 21.
Of course, with the women, Australia already got one win in this test rubber with the singles win, of course, of Kelsey Cottrell. So, as Brenton rightly said, the differential. Ellen Ryan now draws virtually a front touch-up. Certainly an improvement from this Australian women's combination from what we saw yesterday. And I go back to the 5-end blocks as we spoke about. And we saw New Zealand score 9 shots in the first 5 ends, and Australia, of 3 of the 5 ends in the second block, they've also scored 9 shots in that. So it's that sort of, it's the tactics of how you want to, and of course the coaches look at this and say these are the areas where we just got to get our concentration better, delivery better, and more than likely reading the heads better as individuals. As we watch now, Lindsay Clark going to cut away under the line. Australia starting early in domination of this head with a bowl right on top. Selena Smith, I'm sure, will play on her backhand, trying to reach that shot bowl of Ellen Ryan's.
Australia have just emulated New Zealand, haven't they, with a 5 and a 3, just like New Zealand did in the earlier ends. We said how important it is after either dropping or picking up a big number to follow that up. Australia's managed to do it, New Zealand unable to this time around.
So
And I suppose from Australia's perspective, Kevin, Natasha Scott will be relieved that Caitlin Lynch is starting to miss a few now.
absolutely.
Back-to-back ends where she's been able to pull New Zealand out of trouble.
And you see the first bowl, Selena Smith was well short of what was the shot bowl. What Caitlin Lynch is wanting is a bowl close by, so it gives her then something to work to. Certainly got a bit of green. This bowl here is breaking towards the head. This bowl is Selena Smith's a far better bowl as it breaks in towards the head. Still lower the jack, but certainly was on the running line in towards where the shot bowl sits, the bowl of Ellen Ryans. And now we'll see Rebecca Van Ash will draw down on that same backhand line. Drawing inside this Selena Smith bowl will be her endeavour to make another counter of it, and she is inside that line. She gets down towards the bowl now, exactly what we spoke about. Well, that's not actually all bad for New Zealand, because before they couldn't see the jack at all, Brenton. Now, although they're still down on the head, it certainly opened them up to be able to attack down to the jack and see the jack clearly. New Zealand got two bowls in behind the head, so Val Smith again will play down on her backhand, and she'll be attacking down towards the jack, making sure she's reaching it.
And looks on that wide side. Is it going to come back? Caitlin Lynch urging it to, but it's not going to come inside that wide bowl. It did push it into the head, the Selena Smith bowl, so it certainly means that Australia only holding two.
Had the right weight, did Val Smith, just frightened, just slightly even out on that wider side. And again,
He needed to come inside that Selena Smith bowl, of course. Was the ideal weight, but not the worst result.
Not at all, because here's another bowl to the target, really, and now you can play with a lot more weight down on that backhand to the jack, and that's exactly what Caitlin Lynch is saying. Let's get right back to here. Let's not worry about anything else. And, of course, you can dislodge those bowls as well, or one or two of them. So we'll see now Val Smith will attack down on her backhand, trying to get down to the jack. Although Australian do the backest bowl, would still leave them holding one, certainly better than three down for sure. As we watch now Val Smith playing at a tighter line with more weight down towards that jack area that we're talking about, breaking down towards the head now. May get these two Australian bowls. Unfortunate, got nothing. That's not all bad though, really.
Not a bad place to be. If you weren't going to quite get rid of those Australian bowls or sit on them, ending up there is not bad.
You can see how
Caitlin Lynch is able to move that jack.
But you can see, Brenton, as well, how important that 2 metre mark is. You know, and of course Australia always play the jack down towards the 2 metre mark. And their philosophy is that we're going to get them close towards that 2 metre mark. So even if some damage occurs, jack's going to go back, and it goes back to the 2 metre mark. So their philosophy is, one, we can attack back to the back end of the green, but two, the main job of the lead in two is to make sure that they're drawing close to that 2 metre mark, and it sets their heads up, you know, quite strongly.
Yeah, it certainly does. And with these, they don't have bowls short of the head either. They've got two bowls right above the score graphic here, and then one out to the left as well, which could play a role if the jacks move. So they're all pretty effective bowls.
Yes,
really.
they have. Yeah, they are. And they sort of cancel out each one of the New Zealand bowls as we watch now. The skip, Natasha Scott, playing down towards the head, and they're not going to help New Zealand here, is it? Because we've got a touch on the back of the jack, would have been helpful for New Zealand. But again, under pressure again is the young New Zealand skip, Caitlin Lynch. She certainly, in this last few ends, been in from ends 6, 7, 8 and 9. The pressure's been on Caitlin Lynch's two bowls, hasn't it?
No, it certainly has. In the last two ends in particular, where she was unable to pull the New Zealand women's four out of the fire, really. And it's meant Australia picked up 8 shots on the last couple of ends to have this 3-shot advantage, which they have now.
So Caitlin Lynch will certainly be attacking for the jack or reduction on the backhand. It's on its way. Just how far on that centre line is it? Close to getting something. Got one of them, and got
one of the New Zealanders as well. So knocked out one of the Van Ash bowls, was out to the left, and the Val Smith bowl, who was very close to the target. She'll get another opportunity. Tasha Scott, though, will try and make things difficult for her.
We're assuming that Australia are laying 3 shots as we watch this bowl of Natasha Scott. She gets the New Zealand bowl. She turned that New Zealand bowl out. There was a bigger number, I can assure you, as well. Now, here's the problem now for New Zealand as well. 3 down. If we got the jack in the ditch, we're still 3 down because there's 1, 2, 3 bowls sitting there in behind. So perhaps the option now for Caitlin Inch is to perhaps not with that same weight and trying to get down to the shot bowl and get the jack.
I think she's now talking about trying to get rid of the shot bowl. So the bowl just to the right of the pitcher. If you get rid of that, then it's maybe only 1. That
Correct.
Bowl out to the left, because this Selena Smith bowl out to the right of the pitcher should be the second, just over the bowl from Natasha Scott, which has the little black mark on it, just to the left there as well.
So
just past the jack.
As Brendan's saying, if either the shot bowl then gets dislodged and the jack gets killed, it removes then one of what would be a counting bowl anyway when the jack goes back onto the 2 metre mark, and perhaps New Zealand only 1 down. So no doubt for the 4th.
I think that's what they were gesturing anyway to start with. Whether that's the final plan, we'll find out very shortly with the bowl Caitlin Inch delivers.
Certainly be attacking again on the backhand.
Here it comes. Don't think she likes it. Might actually get rid of her own 1, unfortunately, and that's made the situation worse. That could be 4 for Australia. They'll get rid of 3. So that was the danger of playing that shot, that if she was a bit narrow, that she wouldn't in fact take out the shot bowl, take out the Selena Smith bowl. And now Australia with 3. Val Smith measuring to see if it's 4.
May not be 4 actually. I might be. Oh, it is.
No, it is certainly 4.
Certainly 4.
So 3 big ends for Australia. A 5, a 3, and now a 4. 16-9. They now lead after 9 of the 15 ends in this women's 4s matchup. And the tables have completely turned from, was it 9-4 or 9-3 they were up?
9-3. Yep.
To now be 16-9 down.
So as we spoke about, the 5-end blocks in these games, New Zealand scoring the 9 shots in that first 5 ends, commanding that 9-3 lead. Then we saw a 1, a 5, a 3 and a 4, 16-9. 13 shots now that Australia have come back into that second block.
And still an end of play in it.
Yeah, and now, correct. And, it's just, and I'm sure for New Zealand coaches, these are the things at the international level that you really, really got to concentrate on. And as Mike Kernahan spoke to you about yesterday, these are things that you don't make sure that happen. That's what causes the issues. You drop one big one, it happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, and unfortunately for New Zealand, they've just been really giving Caitlin Inch too much to do. And this time, the last few ends, she hasn't been able to get them out of trouble. She hasn't been able to come up with that amazing shot, unfortunately. And they've really just haven't got enough off the front for her to work with.
No.
She's been playing catch-up and hasn't been able to dig them out of trouble. In the men's 4s, Australia leading 14-6 after 10 of the 15 ends. And the men's singles in the race to 21, it's now Shannon McElroy 14-11 over Aaron Wilson of Australia.
So, of course, New Zealand men won the first test series yesterday at Club Helensvale. And today, of course, the big challenge for the New Zealand men to see 2 good bowls this end from Wendy Jensen. Could we see the New Zealand men get into a position where we win the Trans-Tasman for the men today? Big call, I understand. And remembering, of course, New Zealand have not won the men's Trans-Tasman for a long, long, long time. So great opportunity here for this New Zealand 5 to put themselves in, not the record books, but certainly, let's get that victory, which has been so elusive for so many years.
Yeah,
and
something I mentioned with Mike Kernahan. He says, We don't think about the outcome. Didn't want to dare to dream about that. Yes, 2009, the last time New Zealand won the men's Trans-Tasman. I believe Gary Lawson was in that team.
He was.
I believe Shannon McElroy was also in that team.
This is better from the New Zealand side. 2 good bowls from Wendy Jensen, and followed up by the first bowler, Selena Smith, drawing right alongside the jack. That's what we've missed in the previous, 4 ends. And the New Zealand girls now know that they can't stay in this game. They're going to start scoring. And now the call from Caitlin Inch, right? We're holding 3, get past the head, get to the 2 metre mark, so that we can control the game.
Oh, and you've got to be happy with the response from the New Zealand team.
Absolutely.
Caitlin Inch, your front end has been off its game the last few ends, but then after dropping 3 big numbers last 3 ends, they come up with this, and very promising signs. And not quite where Caitlin Inch wanted that bowl from Selena Smith, but again, not in the worst place.
Oh, and it's still an effective bowl, still in the counting area and in the cover area. So, this is a good comeback by the New Zealand team, the New Zealand forward side, with Winnie Jensen and Selena Smith, giving the New Zealand side a good start on this, the 10th of 15 ends, as New Zealand trails 16-9. As we see,
it'll all be undone here though by Rebecca Van Ash. Rebecca Van Ash finding her way, and now that jack sitting right behind it, not quite a toucher, but as good as a toucher. And so New Zealand holding 3, potentially 4. Now down 1 on the count.
So we've seen that Val Smith, we're trying to reach that bowl of Rebecca Van Ash, get a turn on it. She's on a good line here as New Zealand number 3, and they got the bowl clean. Did it turn it out far enough? I think so. Definitely, I think it'll be 1 to Australia. The New Zealand, perhaps not sure.
Yeah, I think maybe I even might favour the Selena Smith white bowl out to the left.
That's the bowl that I was favouring, the Selena Smith bowl.
Or maybe even the Wendy Jensen bowl, which is short.
So here's a reply from Rebecca Van Ash. Looks on a good line again, does Van Ash, but just going to pull up short. So good head start here by the New Zealand side. It was Musgrave Hill, the man behind the club here, former New Zealand player, Brian Baldwin, son of the late Dave Baldwin. Winner of a gold medal was Dave in the 1974 Commonwealth Games in Christchurch, along with Kerry Clark, and they won that 4s medal with Jack Somerville as well, and Gordon Jolly. And now, of course, Brian also then represented New Zealand at the Commonwealth Games, and now the manager here, and has been for many, many years, the club manager here at in Musgrave Hill, a product of the Paratutu Club in Taranaki, and certainly a very proud New Zealander is Brian Baldwin. Does a wonderful job up here, as he has for many years at Musgrave Hill, and certainly always makes us welcome when we turn up.
2 big high fives there for Val Smith, because 2 very good bowls. Firstly, getting rid of the Australian shot bowl. Now doing exactly what Skip wanted, getting close to the 2 metre mark, or having a New Zealand back bowl, because obviously Australia had the 2 back bowls, as you can see in picture here. So
one would think
good
from
work
that,
by
Brendan,
Smith.
One would think, Brendan, from that New Zealand perhaps are holding more than the 1 shot there, and covering, holding, going to sort of protect the number on the head. Could be a couple there that New Zealand are holding. 16-9 Australia lead as we come to the final stages of the rink in 10 of 15. As we see the drive from the Australians. Oh, that's better for New Zealand. Got a back of the jack movement onto the shot bowl, and just moved the jack back about 15 inches.
So 3 New Zealand holding. I think they were certainly holding 2 previously, maybe even 3. So maybe hasn't in fact changed the situation too much, but has meant that New Zealand, with this 1 Australian bowl to be played, and a good position here.
Certainly makes it a wee bit more difficult as well for Natasha Scott to get to the jack, because it's moved slightly off that centre line. And you've got a New Zealand bowl in front, so here's now Caitlin Inch on her forehand, with New Zealand holding on this, the 10th of the 15 ends. As we watch the inch bowl break down towards the jack, just gonna, how's the weight gonna be? Is it gonna get all the way down? It's on a good line, just not quite gonna get to the counting area. And the call from Rebecca Van Ash is to drive down through the middle, try and get down to the shot bowl. Barry Lester just walked past us here. Barry Lester, of course, has been for some time part of the Australian side, but not in this Trans-Tasman, but I wouldn't say out of contention for the world side when it's about to be announced.
Coming with the weight is Natasha Scott. Has she got the jack? Yes, she has. And into the ditch, I think it's gone. Is it popped back out, or is it... It's going to be respotted? No, it's not. It stayed in the ditch. So, it has certainly changed the situation here. The shot bowl didn't stay in the ditch, though, the toucher, by the looks of things. So, should be 1 to New Zealand. That's the situation we would believe here. This black and white bowl. I think it's the earlier bowl we saw. As there we go, the white market is coming to the screen. Thank you, Ben, for just panning over to the right-hand side. We can see that the white marker, that indicates where the jack is. So that certainly tells us. Although, is that an Australian bowl? Right in the ditch, I can assume there. Just
looks
right
as though there's an Australian bowl sitting. Is it sitting right underneath the number? Is that? It looks like a bowl.
You think so, don't
Looks
you?
like, unless it was a... No, certainly
maybe Australia holding one.
So we'll see now as... Oh, the bowler Caitlin Lynch has just rolled into the ditch.
Oh, very unfortunate. So Australia picked up the mat, so they've picked up another shot here. So it should be 17-9 after 10 now of the 18 ends. We'll just try and creak around and try and find that scoreboard for you to find out exactly, but I believe it was just the one for Australia, and we've got a myriad of obstacles in the way of the scoreboard, so I'll park that idea for a while. I can bring you up to date though in the men's fours. Australia leading 16-6 now after 11 of the 15 ends in the men's fours. In the men's singles, Shannon McElroy in the race to 21 against Aaron Wilson of Australia is leading 15-12 in that contest.
So things looking on the hard side for New Zealand in round one here of the second Trans-Tasman, with Joe Webbage, of course, already losing to Kelsey Cottrell in the women's singles, and the Australian men's fours got a handy lead over New Zealand, as have the women's triples, Australian women's fours side, I mean, and of course Shannon McElroy leading for New Zealand in the singles. So at this point in time, Brendan, not the best opening round on day two for New Zealand.
No, it's certainly not. New Zealand won 3 of the 4 contests in the first session of the first test. Looks like Australia on course to win 3 of the 4 in the first session of the second test. Already having won the one, of course, Kelsey Cottrell 21-9 over Joe Edwards in the women's singles, and being in charge of both fours contests, women here and men, just on that rink alongside, couple alongside. You see the men all over their head, a couple of rinks over to the right, and then Shannon McElroy leading in the men's singles, but only narrowly.
Of course, we saw Shannon McElroy yesterday have a very handsome win over Aaron Wilson on the comeback after being out, not playing. Of course, Shannon McElroy in the multi-nations in the last Trans-Tasman, and really his bowls have really been the bowls 3-5 was his last serious event, and came out yesterday in his first game of singles and had a good win over Aaron Wilson. As we watch now, the Australians holding 2 shots in this woman's fours in behind the head, as 2 Wendy Jensen bowls short. And you know, going back to that 5-end scenario, we saw Australia score, the Australian women's side score 14 shots in those ends, 6 to 10. And that's, as we said earlier on in the commentary, it's just important how you control the games. And we left the gate open as we see another short bowl here come in from New Zealand. And this is what we're talking about, Brendan, before, about getting the percentage of those effective bowls in play to be able to build good scoring heads. And that's the big job for the New Zealand coaching panel, to make sure that we get improvement in that consistency.
17-9 is the confirmed score after 10 of the 15 ends. So we're at 2/3 of the way through this contest. Australia have scored the last 14 shots in this game. They were 9-3 down against the New Zealand women's force, skipped by Caitlin Inch, but have really taken charge in this second third of the game.
So we've got a bit of bowl here though from Selena Smith. This is a good response to New Zealand number 2, and it will draw most of, I would say, yes, second shot. Well played by Selena Smith, drew in behind right to the centre line into behind the jack, and that's a good response.
A much needed bowl as well, with after those 3 short ones. First couple from Wendy Jensen and the first from Selena Smith. And this is just going to top it. Coming off Australian bowl there, Beck Van Ash, and then sitting on that previous bowl from Selena Smith. You think might be 2 now for Australia.
And all New Zealand can do is endeavour to try and draw down on that backhand side, down past the short bowls, with Wendy Jensen trying to get down to where the jack is to sit on the Australian bowls. But the Val Smith bowl might have the weight, but looks as though it's going to slip under the centre line, and it does. As Brendan said, definitely 1, maybe 2 to Australia, as they lead 17-9 as we play the 11th of the 15 ends. So far, the rain has stayed away, but it's certainly a drop in the temperature, and we've got, well, there's wind every day at Musgrave Hill, as we said before. Another good bowl coming in here from the Australians, from Rebecca Van Ash, sits right alongside the jack.
She's been excellent, isn't she, Rebecca Van Ash, just carrying over her form along with Lindsay Clark, who have been dominant in the women's pairs so far in this Trans-Tasman Test Series, winning both of their matches against Selena Smith and Jo Edwards in emphatic fashion, and have really had a big impact, both of those players, on this Australian women's four.
Certainly have. They've been, to me, they've been, well, Kelsey Cottrell obviously in the singles, but Rebecca Van Ash, and good bowl there from Val Smith, definitely second shot, well played by the New Zealand number 3, but Van Ash and Lindsay Clark have been pretty consistent right throughout, and certainly helped Natasha Scott, who, in building the heads. And a lot of pressure being applied to the young New Zealand skip, Caitlin Inch, from those 2 players, the bowls that they've played, especially in those ends between ends 6 and 10, where they dominated the game. And it was, a lot of that was done by the great work of Lindsay Clark and Rebecca Van Ash, as we watch now Natasha Scott with Australia holding the 1, breaking down towards the head. It's not going to come into contention. In fact, it's short.
And blocking up that backhand side somewhat as well. So in the end, actually ends up being quite a nuisance value for New Zealand.
Well, I think we may see the attempt from Kelsey Cottrell, or sorry, from Caitlin Inch to possibly play with weight through that port, trying to get to the shot bowl. Quite safe to do so, in fact, because of where the second shot of New Zealand is sort of locked in behind the jack. So Caitlin Inch can endeavour to try and reach down there with weight. Very difficult, as you say, Brendan, to try and draw it with those 2 short bowls, especially that last one, and Natasha Scott sitting virtually right on the draw line. So we'll see now as Caitlin Inch, no doubt, will be attacking.
Yeah, see if she can get the right result this time. It looks like it's going to come narrow under the line again. Unfortunate there. Has not been having the usual high percentage of success with her drive shots in this match, unfortunately, for New Zealand's sake.
Well, I suppose Brendan could say pressure brings about that as well, doesn't it? You know, you know very well that you got to get the results, and
yeah, well, usually she loves that, doesn't it? We've seen her
yeah.
time and time again execute when put under pressure over these Trans-Tasman tests, both the one in November and this one here now in February.
Sure, they should be playing that same shot again, and let's just hope she can just correct that line fractionally, and certainly on a wider line, but won't come back on that weight. I'm sure it won't. And in fact, rocked back on the bowls, but made no difference to it. And still, Australia.
One to Australia, 18-9. So they double up now on New Zealand's score. Another end goes away from New Zealand. 11 of 15 now completed. So just 4 remain in this women's fours match. This is the first session of the second Trans-Tasman test here at Musgrave Hill on Australia's Gold Coast. Already we've had Kelsey Cottrell, a 21-19 winner over Joe Edwards in the women's singles. Men's fours also very much going Australia's way after 12 of the 15 ends. It's Australia 16, New Zealand 7. It's tightening up even more in the men's singles. Shannon McElroy now leading Aaron Wilson 16-14. What's a matchup of the world champion in McElroy against the Commonwealth Games champion in Wilson.
And we do see, I can see Shannon McElroy in fact holding 2 shots now in that men's singles. I can just see a gap through in front of us here, and can see the 2 blue and white bowls of Shannon McElroy's right on top of the jack. As we see a good opening bowl from Alan Ryan, and sits right alongside the jack. And again we see the Wendy Jensen first bowl unfortunately pull up short, just on the centre line by a metre, but short. Alan Ryan again coming down towards the jack. Had a good bowl with the first. There's going to be another good bowl. Sits in fact right on the jack, moves the jack out to the side. And we'll see now Wendy Jensen need to change her hand, and Caitlin Ince pleading with her to give us that extra yard of weight to make sure you're up to the head.
You see a few of the players wearing jackets. Wendy Jensen, one of those. Alan Ryan, both leads for New Zealand. Well, certainly had the weight, but more than just a extra few yards. Good extra 5-6 metres of weight from their first one. And now will be the back bowl for New Zealand. Lindsay Clark with her first, playing on her forehand side. And this is a pretty handy bowl as well. Obviously the jack in a far different position, not on that centre line, and to draw within a foot, that's outstanding from Lindsay Clark. And just continuing on what we said in the previous end, how much we've been impressed with Clark and Van Ash in particular.
So Selena Smith trying to get down to the jack, definitely 2 down. New Zealand, and this is going to just slip under the centre line and sit just outside the Australian second bowl. Good attempt there by Selena Smith, not quite getting the result she wanted, but close to it, as we see now. Lindsay Clark play her second bowl, and you're quite right, Brendan. It's been very, very impressive. Here's Lindsay Clark, another good bowl in and around the head. Certainly has been, I think, the glue in this Australian side this morning. So here's Selena Smith trying to make amends. Looks though if it's under that centre line, needs to sit on something. Fat will sit this time on the Australian bowl. Indication from Caitlin Ince may well have made shot of it.
A great bowl by Selena Smith, much needed as well. Lindsay Clark had played 2 good bowls. Alan Ryan had played a good bowl as well. And first wasn't far away, and good adjustment with his second. Sitting on that Australian bowl just to the right of the jack. Now Van Ash.
Close to getting a result here is Rebecca Van Ash, and she does.
Oh, that makes sure that certainly is the shot now. If they didn't have it already, Australia.
Well, Smith will try and emulate that shot just played by Rebecca Van Ash, either get to the shot bulb or the jack. Australia definitely holding one, leading 18-9 as we play the 12th of 15 ends.
Already been the one result so far in the women's singles going Australia's way. Kelsey Cottrell 21-9 over Joe Edwards on Joe Edwards' 50th birthday. We'll be bringing you a rematch between those two in the third and final session of the second Trans-Tasman test. And the next session at around 3 p.m. New Zealand time, it'll be a men's pairs match as we see another great bowl from Rebecca Van Ash. This time a touch-up, trails the jack through, high fives all round. And we've mentioned it the last couple of ends, but Clark and Van Ash, they are unstoppable at the moment.
Playing magnificently well, and they, the nice thing about their play is every one of their bowls has certainly got that lovely natural arc and into the head. They're playing with great weight control, and certainly giving the Natasha Scott skip side, to me, from Ian 6 onwards, they have been absolutely outstanding, these two Australian players at 2 and 3 respectively. And we'll see now Belle Smith having to play with searching weight again, and of course New Zealand's got nothing over their head, so not much of a scoring chance, more of a reduction opportunity. And Belle Smith now trying to get down to these front bowls, and does, and it would be 2 now to much difference. So it'd be 2 to Australia, Brendan, from there.
Yeah, it certainly looks like unfortunate there. Val Smith knocked out one of New Zealand bowls from the area. Didn't manage to change the situation. So Australia holding a couple.
So of course New Zealand, Brendan, really need to, they've got to score this end and really hope that they can pick up some numbers on the remaining 3 ends, because you very quickly run out of time as we watch this bowl of the Australian skip.
Well, the women's test, and with it the women's test series, is fast slipping away from the New Zealand women here, and that is because they obviously lost the first test, and there's only 6 matches a day, and for men and for women, and they haven't already dropped the singles. If they drop the 4s as well, 2-0 down, that would mean they need to win the next 4, because you'd think 3 of the 4 might not be enough given the differential they've already given up. They're -12 in singles and -9 as it currently stands.
Great attempt there by Caitlin Ince, trying to get the one New Zealand bowl into the head to push that into the counting position. In fact, played it very, very well, just got the wrong side of the bowl. In Australia, still lane 2, and as Brendan rightly says, the killer for New Zealand, having to get the wins, of course, is the differential. Because these first 2 games, that differential would be a killer. As we watch another bowl from Natasha Scott draw its way into the head, that will more than likely count as well, I'd say. And the difficulty, of course, for New Zealand to try and split the hit on the drive is the 2 short bowls, one of New Zealand bowls, Selena Smith bowl and one Australian bowl, and of course the very short bowl of Wendy Jensen is just cutting that natural vision line off down towards the jack. So, where I feel sorry for Caitlin Ince is that really from the 16 onwards has had virtually not one head of strength to play to.
Yeah, it's been a lot of catch up from the New Zealand skip, unfortunately, playing from behind and unable to get her side out of difficulty. It seems a long time ago when New Zealand picked up a 5 and 3 on back-to-back ends to take a 9-3 lead.
Here's a great attempt here from Caitlin Ince to get to the shot bowl of the jack. She's right on. Just got a feather. That was desperately unlucky by the New Zealand skip. She was online to get the ultimate result there, to get the shot bowl.
It should be another 2 for Australia, so 29 they'll now lead after 12 of the 15 ends. A lot of fans now gathering making it slightly difficult to see scoreboards. In the men's fours, Australia's leading 18-7 after 13 of the 15 ends there in that contest. In the men's singles, Shannon McElroy now leading Aaron Wilson of Australia, 18-14 in the race to 21. He's led for the majority, just extending his lead there. Now 3 shots away from winning the men's singles, and Shannon McElroy and getting New Zealand on the board for the first time today.
So all in front of them now in this New Zealand women's fours side as they trail 20-9, and an opening toucher by Ellen Ryan sits right on top of the jack. This the 13th end, and it's certainly been convincing. This Australian fours combination from that 16 onwards, when they picked up that one when they were trailing 9-3, and picked up a 1 for 9-4, and from then on they just went on to a big scoring spree. As you see the first bowl of Wendy Jensen's go well past the head.
17-0 over the previous 7 ends, isn't it?
Yes, it is correct.
And in fact, it was a 3 on the previous end. We've just finally been able to get a glimpse of the scoreboard, so it's actually 21-9. 21-9 after 12 of the 15 ends, so it was actually a 3 scored on the previous end.
2 magnificent bowls there from Alan Ryan for the opening, the lead for the Australian side, and very quickly just shuts the door on the New Zealand side to have a scoring head. And here's Wendy Jensen's going to fall short. So right on the centre line, and the chances of New Zealand scoring on this end, Brenton, are very quickly evaporated.
Yeah, and that's what we have seen in the past a lot from Ellen Ryan. She's certainly capable of this kind of consistency off the front, and it was a bit of a surprise yesterday. We didn't see that much of it, especially in the game we covered, in the women's triples game. We saw a bit of it just towards the end of the match, but very slow starting, and by then the damage was really done in the contest. The Australians able to claw their way back differential-wise, but the match was gone.
And Ellen Ryan this morning in this game has been very consistent right throughout, but we can't forget the efforts of Lindsay Clark and Rebecca Van Ash, who I think have been outstanding in this game. As we watch the attempt here, valiant attempt by Selena Smith, just short of weight, but just trying to get down to the bowls. Val Smith and Caitlin Ince, just a bit of a smile there.
Well, Natasha Scott, in contrast to Caitlin Inch, really, since that 5th end, has really not had to do much.
No, not
Early
at all.
on, when they dropped that 5-3 Australia, she was unable to get Australia out of trouble.
Correct.
Because New Zealand were playing very well, Caitlin Inch, Val Smith in particular. But from that moment on, she's really had to not do anything.
Well, I was just going to say, Brennan, she could have just about left her bowls in a bowling bag, because she hasn't really had to do anything at all, has she? Because they've all been there, just like we're seeing now. In New Zealand, haven't been able to get their way, to play shots, to get out of it, despite their best efforts. Another good effort here from Selena Smith, knowing she can't be short, and a very small target to play to, and lands right on the 2 metre mark. And again, I said, because of the short bowl of Wendy Jensen's up in front there, the New Zealand are faced where it's only a one-hand option which they have got to try and score. Australia don't have to score any more points. They've got enough on the head now, got enough on the scoreboard, and they just play checkers or drafts to make sure that New Zealand can't pick up any numbers. And full marks to have Australia after that early setback have just got it.
15 minutes remaining.
Yes, you might have just heard the 15-minute call going out over there. So we'll be touch and go whether we get to finish this match. The women's fours actually yesterday, when they played, only got through 14 of the 15 ends. You'd think they should be starting the 15th end in time.
Yeah, they'll get in. We're playing 13 now, coming down the back end of 13.
And it's not like it's super close, so there won't be long deliberations like there was in that game yesterday when the match was decided with the final bowl from Caitlin Inch.
Yes, because there's no scoring options as well for the one side doesn't really have to score, another side there's not scoring options anyway. So it's just disappointing, and it's. So, if you're a New Zealand selector, you'd have to be sitting in there scratching your head saying, well, where do we go? Where do we go? Who do we go to tighten up this front end of our New Zealand women's side? Because that really, Brenda's virtually the only unanswered question really in selecting the New Zealand side is how do we tighten up?
Well, a pairs partner.
Well,
but that's part of the situation.
It
obviously.
is. Yeah, we've got to find one player who is going to give us that good start in either playing 3 bowls with Joe Edwards in the pairs, or leading in both the women's fours and the women's triples. That's what they've got to find. And you and I have sat now for the last 3 lots of internationals, and we have struggled really in that consistency off the front. Although we did win the gold medal in the fours in the Asia Pacific with Kirsten Edwards, of course, and Wendy Jensen. There's been fewer. We tried Taylor Bruce since then, came in. They changed the combinations around and changed the combinations around again this time. And that's the struggle point that we haven't been able to. They sorted things out by changing Val Smith and Caitlin Inch over from 3 and skip. That's worked. Now it's just a matter of we've got to find how we get that front part working properly. Yes. With consistency.
Certainly is, and something for the selectors
great
to think
attempt
about.
Here from Caitlin. It is a great attempt by the New Zealand player, but rested in on the bowls, but of course it was all Australian bowls around it, but certainly got to the target line. And
I think Australia's holding 2, despite that bowl from Caitlin Inch. It wasn't far away indeed. Obviously there's been an element of the selectors wanting to try players as well and give everyone an opportunity to.
And Australians applaud that bowl of Natasha Scott as it rolled its way into the head, and really the only option that Caitlin Inch has got to play that same sort of shot. If she's got a flick off her own inside of her own bowl, could get the jack and move the jack back to where there's a Selena Smith bowl waiting just past the 2 metre mark. That's virtually the only option for Caitlin Inch, and that's a shot that she's trying to play. May just be on the wide side, and it is.
So it will be 2 more of the count for Australia. 23-9 it is now after 13 of the 15 ends. Women's fours and the men's fours with an end to play. Australia up 18-8 in the men's fours. We've obviously already had the women's singles completed. Kelsey Cottrell of Australia beating New Zealand's Joe Edwards 21-9. And in the men's singles, it is Shannon McElroy now 1 shot away. The world champion from New Zealand leading the Commonwealth Games gold medalist Aaron Wilson of Australia 22-16. So that's been a great contest between those two. Shannon McElroy trying to get New Zealand on the board and trying to avoid a sweep of the first session matches here of this second test. Australia with 1 win already in the women's singles, now guaranteed, you think, to win in both the, well, they are guaranteed to win in the women's fours here in front of us, and also in the men's fours, just a couple of rinks away.
Well, the most we can get to is 21. Been a pretty impressive display from this Australian forward side, as they've simply commanded from that 60 and onwards. They've just owned the game and just reverted the pressure straight back onto New Zealand, and it's all come about from what the front have done, and then complemented so well by Lindsay Clark and Rebecca Van Ash especially. They've certainly made it a comfortable ride all the way through from that 60 and onwards for their skip. Natasha Scott, as we watch now, Wendy Jensen drawing down towards a jack. A good bowl from Jensen, a little too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can also tell you that the men's fours has now actually been completed. Australia winning 19-8 in the men's fours. So Australia 2-0 early on in this second Trans-Tasman test, winning 2 of the 4 matches already, and obviously going to be winning here right in front of us as well in the women's fours. So it's all on Shannon McElroy to try and get New Zealand on the board in the first session, and what's been a complete reversal from the first session yesterday when New Zealand ended up winning 3 of the 4 matches, those being in the pairs and triples disciplines, the fours and singles, and this stands it not going New Zealand's way.
But as you rightly say as well, Brendan, the other thing which of course this is doing, as far as the differential aspect is concerned with the women, it's really put them in a position where you've got to win them all.
Exactly right, yeah. The last 3 Trans-Tasman tests shows how evenly matched the Australian women and New Zealand women have finished 3-3, 3 matches apiece. All have been decided on shot differential. All have gone Australia's way. But going into a hole like this, minus 26 they'll be now, going into the last 4 matches. That's going to be hard to dig your way out of. So, like you say, they're going to have to win the last 4 matches to keep the Test series alive.
Correct.
Otherwise, Australia will be winning it once more.
Absolutely, and it's ominous signs, this Australian performance. And you know, I was thinking that the New Zealand, I didn't that confident the Australian women's side were that strong actually, but I've very quickly been proven wrong, because boy, have they bounced back today big time. And that sort of hold that Kelsey Cottrell at this point in time has got over Joe Edwards in the singles. Last 3, another one today of course, but I'm sure that will be Joe Edwards' birthday present, that she'll get that one. I'll
You got your money on that one. That's what we're going to be bringing to you in the 3rd session of the day. Coming up next, it will be men's pairs. Of course, in the 2nd session of the day, it is pairs and triples. So we're bringing you the men's pairs. There'll be Shannon McElroy and Gary Lawson of New Zealand up against Corey Wedlock and Aaron Wilson. Of course, McElroy and Lawson, the Asia Pacific champions from last year, who went unbeaten, winning all of their matches and competition. Then you've got Corey Wedlock and Aaron Wilson, very much in form, having recently won the Burnside pairs down in Christchurch as well. So looking forward to that contest. That'll be starting in around an hour's time, I'd say, just over an hour's time away after 3 o'clock at New Zealand time. So make sure you do join us for that. And of course, we'll be coming in our 2nd session, and then we'll also keep you up to date with the other disciplines, the women's pairs, the women's triples, and also the men's pairs, men's triples rather, taking place as well in that 2nd session, as the Blackjacks will no doubt try and bounce back from what has been a disappointing start to the 2nd Trans-Tasman test.
I'm confident that they'll bounce back. I saw enough yesterday, especially the men's side yesterday. I saw enough to have some confidence in what they can do, and I'm sure that they can bounce back. They're good enough players, and I'm sure that they can match the Australians. And already we've seen bad luck there from Val Smith trying to get onto that shot bowl of Australia. And of course the Shannon McElroy game is still in progress, but McElroy has got back to into the routine of being New Zealand's singles player. And if we can get this win as well over Aaron Wilson, you couldn't wish for a better start for your singles your singles player to win 2 from 3 if that was 2 from 2 if that was to happen.
Well, especially because Aaron Wilson in the last Trans-Tasman won all 4 matches in the singles against Andrew Kelly,
Played
again
2,
against
correct.
Jamie Hill, and Shannon McElroy, of course, winning yesterday, and so really even in the ledger, and just showing how invaluable he is to this New Zealand team as well if he's able to get this result too. Aaron Wilson actually collected a single on the previous end, so it's 2017 now. Shannon McElroy over Aaron Wilson in the race to 21.
So that's certainly not over, because we know what Aaron Wilson can do. And actually, if we go back to those Trans-Tasman and the multi-nations, especially but the Trans-Tasman, in fact, he wasn't really even tested, Aaron Wilson. I think that New Zealand may have got to about 15 in one particular of the game, but most of them
I think
around.
Jamie Hill got 17 in one, maybe even the one here. That were, remember the race they were having?
That's right.
The fastest singles game of all time.
They were too. They were. And yeah, they were. The market couldn't keep up with them.
No, the market couldn't keep up with it. They were cruelly making the market pick up their mats as well, having mats at each end.
Yeah, I remember.
It was quite comical at times. But yeah, Aaron Wilson was just a class above, and it was always going to be tough for Andrew Kelly and Jamie Hill. Obviously, they were just there as placeholders, weren't they? Shannon McElroy was always going to come back, and it is shake hands time there. So Shannon McElroy has won, and New Zealand's on the board on day 2 of this Trans-Tasman Test Series here at Musgrave Hill. The second test, 21-17 it finishes in Shannon McElroy's favour. So much needed win for New Zealand after the men's fours earlier lost 19-8, and in the women's singles, Kelsey Cottrell a 21-9 winner over Joe Edwards. Now all that remains is the match in front of us to complete this first session of play here at Musgrave Hill.
And I can tell you that we saw Caitlin Inch get the jack and kill it, but all that's going to do is see it go. Not stayed alive.
Still must be alive.
Going to the jack right down there.
Must be in the
must
inside
just
the peg.
Be close to the line for sure.
Well, there's the peg there, just for the knee of Selena Goller. There you see the peg.
So New Zealand
got the mats.
Have got the mats.
So they've ended the run. 8 straight ends it was that Australia scored on. They were 9-3 up. If you are just joining us, New Zealand now, of course, 23-9 down. We'll wait confirmation of how many they collected on that end. But certainly scoring again, and it was just a single. So 23-10 now after 14 of the 15 ends. So now playing the final end, and the siren has not gone off, so we will be completing this match. Of course, once the siren goes, as long as you've started the end, you finish it. And Wendy Jensen has already laid down the jack, much shorter end as well, which New Zealand have preferred. Unfortunately for them, they haven't had the mat for a long time, because Australia's been scoring on the last 8 of them before end number 9 of that run.
Well, New Zealand, of course, at this point only scored on 4 of the 14 ends played, and of course they picked up 2 singles, a 5 and a 3, and a good opening bowl from Wendy Jensen as New Zealand go back to their very preferred shorter length head, and Jensen has responded to that with drawing very, very close to the jack. So after this first round, the Australian women, they'll have 2 from 2, and in the men it'll be all locked up 1 apiece, with the Australian fours defeating the Ellie Forsyth skip side, and Shannon McElroy defeating Aaron Wilson. Australia would be ahead on differential.
Correct.
In the men.
Because they won plus 11 in the fours, whereas McElroy was only plus 4 in the singles. So that's a plus 7 advantage to Australia. And shot differential, which the women, New Zealand women, know all too much about, unfortunately.
So Alan Ryan again drawing just in behind the jack. Been a very consistent performance by the young Australian lead. Selena Smith now trying to get down to the jack and close to getting at the jack, and does get front toucher onto the jack. It's the first time we've seen 2 New Zealand bowls sitting in and around the jack for some time. So certainly New Zealand girls are still giving it everything they can, and of course any shots that we can score, Brenton, are very helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Although I do get the feeling that the differential's already lost. It's going to be a mountain to climb for the women differential-wise. Very much for them, I think the target will be they've just got to win the 4 matches to win this Trans-Tasman Test, given that they have already lost the singles heavily. Joe Edwards, 21-9, losing to Kelsey Cottrell, and then here at the moment, 13 down. Even though if they score a 4, it's still going to be 9 down differential-wise, and it's more than 20 down overall.
It's a big mountain, right? And the only way you get over that mountain, Brenton, is with W's. It's the only outcome now early on for New Zealand women, and of course the men. This next round we'll have, of course, men's pairs and men's triples, and we'll be bringing you the men's pairs. As Brenton said, that's Shannon McElroy and Gary Lawson, and they'll be desperately trying to hold their very, very good record that they have got. As we watch this bowl of Val Smith coming down towards the shot bowl and just slips past it. New Zealand holding the shot on this, the 15th end. And of course, tomorrow, a full suite of games from Broadbeach, which we just see the jack move by Rebecca Van Ash to an Australian bowl. And we're either going to see tomorrow in the men especially, it's either close to play today, New Zealand have got the Trans-Tasman locked up, or we go into Broadbeach tomorrow 1-1. So a big day coming up tomorrow as well at Broadbeach, which we'll have all the coverage for you.
Yeah, will it be a decider for the men? Will it potentially be a decider for the women at Broadbeach tomorrow, or the men for the first time since 2009 in the Trans-Tasman?
But as you say, Brian, the big challenge now for the New Zealand women's side, great attempt here from Val Smith, just not going to get the weight to get all the way. But the big thing for the women now, because of the burden of the differential, can only be saved by wins. And it has to be virtually all of them.
Yeah, and the way that they will be talking as well, and they no doubt were talking about it yesterday, let's just get differential out of the situation.
Yep.
You know, let's not even think about differential, and the way you do that is by winning games.
Getting W's.
If you're winning games, differential doesn't come into
Absolutely.
it. And they are going to have to win the rest of them. Only 6 games a day for women, and 6 games a day for men, and already 2 down New Zealand.
Other good news, Brendan, as I look out behind us here, and the skies are quite lightening up and behind us here, so we might that weather pattern that's been threatening may have sort of gone by, and we, although a drop in temperature for sure, we'll get through the day providing this weather stays as it is right now.
Yeah, fingers crossed that is the situation, as we did yesterday at Club Helensvale. Ends up running into one of the New Zealand bowls, knocking it out, but also knocks out an Australian one, I think, from the pitcher. It's hard to tell exactly who's got the shot there. Maybe that Australian bowler near the centre line.
Looks as though it would be the shot, and I'd say the New Zealand bowl in behind would in fact be New Zealand only that 1 down, I would say. Of course, this will be Caitlin Inch's last bowl of this particular match. New Zealand scored on the last end. So Caitlin Inch will endeavour to get down to that Australian counting bowl. It's on a good line as it breaks, and it's going to be under the line. Is it going to get a touch on anything? Yes, it is, but just went past the shot bowl, and it'll be Australia that will score on this, the last end, and restrict New Zealand to, on the 15 ends, New Zealand women's fours only scoring on 4 of the 15 ends, and they'll be very disappointed with this result as we watch the Natasha Scott bowl come in to rest. And that will
very well executed, as it is shake hands time, and we expect that will be 2. Check back with us when we broadcast our second session for the confirmed score, but 25-10 we believe it has finished here. Australia winning this match to make it 3 wins out of 4 for Australia in the first session of this second Trans-Tasman test. It started in the women's singles, 21-9 Kelsey Cottrell over Joe Edwards. Then in the men's fours, Australia 19-8 over New Zealand. Shannon McElroy pulled one back for New Zealand, 21-17 in the men's singles, and now here in the women's fours, a 25-10 win for Australia. We'll be back in just over an hour's time with women's fours action already completed. We will have men's pairs for you coming up in the next session in around an hour's time. Make sure you join us then.